As a small business owner, have you ever felt overwhelmed by the pressure of choosing the right hire or leading a team? Or have you ever found yourself tolerating a bad hire because you fear trying and failing again as you repeat the hiring process? If so, you're not alone, and you are in the right place. Welcome to the Growing Your Team podcast. The Growing Your Team podcast teaches business owners like you to expand your unique business by teaching you to master the hiring and team management process. Hiring and managing a team does not have to be a challenge. You just have to learn to do it right. And the Growing Your Team podcast teaches you how to become a confident leader who hires right every single time. Now, let's jump into the show where each episode you will learn tips on how to identify what type of help you need on your team, how to source amazing candidates, how to conduct interviews that lead you to your ideal team member, how to onboard successfully, and how to lead every person in your business so you have a team of rock stars who you are happy to pay every single paycheck. So let's jump in and teach you how to hire like a pro. Hello, Jamie Van Kuyk here, and welcome back to the Growing Your Team podcast. Today, I have on guest Hannah Smolinski. Hannah is a CPA and the founder of Clara CFO Group, a virtual CFO agency providing small businesses with financial clarity and profit maximization strategies. Her experience working for one of the world's largest accounting firms inspired her to make corporate expertise accessible to small business owners through fractional CFO services. She also hosts a YouTube channel with over 80,000 subscribers and uses the platform to help small businesses achieve financial success. In this conversation, Hannah and I are discussing how to feel confident when it comes to hiring the higher level, more expensive team members. We start off by talking about how to identify who you should hire by looking at your financial data, and then how to feel comfortable with these team members, including how to feel confident when you're recruiting higher level team members when you're a small business who might not be able to offer all the perks and salary levels that they might have received in corporate organizations or are seeing from other companies while they're job searching. And lastly, we talk about the reality of what you can do when you can't afford the higher level help that you need. So let's jump into today's conversation. Hi, Hannah. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Growing Your Team podcast.
Hi, Jamie. Thanks for having me.
Yes. All right. Before we get started, can you take a moment and introduce yourself and your business?
Sure. So my name is Hannah Smolinski. I am a CPA, but I don't do taxes. I always try to make sure that's really clear. I am a numbers nerd. I run a fractional CFO agency called Clara CFO Group, and we help small business owners, mostly B2B service providers, help them with their financial strategy, growing their business through bringing on new team members and helping them with figuring out how to do that in a financially healthy and sustainable way. And then over here, we also focus a lot on financial education. So we have their YouTube channel, which has, I think we're over 80,000 subscribers now on that. And we have lots of videos for people trying to figure out, how to do better with their finances in their business, either how to do their software, use their software well, or how to think about their budgeting or their forecasting, things like that. So we do a little bit of everything, but mostly we're a fractional CFO agency over here.
Awesome. Yeah, so that's great. So many services that businesses need and really need that great support so they can make the right decisions in their business. Like numbers drive so much. We've had a few other people in the financial world on the podcast because I really stress that importance when it comes to growing your business. You have to know and understand your numbers. And it doesn't mean you as a business owner have to really be the expert, but you have to work with the expert that's going to help you understand it if that's not your area of expertise. And also sometimes as business owners, we can get way too close to the day-to-day that we don't see the big picture when it comes to our financials because we're too busy serving our clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very true. Yeah. I mean, that I think it's Warren Buffett that said, accounting is the language of business. And as much as like that might make some people roll their eyes and think, I don't want to learn accounting, if you can just learn to be comfortable with it and you can understand the numbers that are coming out of your business, because everything we do in our business comes out in the financials. That's what I like to think about it that way. Like any activity you do shows up in your numbers that, if you feel comfortable with it and you can look at them and you can understand them, it's really empowering. And that's really what I'm all about with understanding our financials so that we can make better decisions and do
Right.
better.
Yeah. And those decisions tie so closely with being able to grow your team and sustain your team. So,
Yes.
one of the things that I want to just jump right in and talk about, because I feel like it's important, especially if a business owner is listening and they're having the struggle right now, is we talk a lot about numbers to grow our team. What's the signs to hire? How can I afford? And I know we're going to get into some of those things like as we go on with this conversation, but I just want to jump right into one of the things that I know we haven't talked about, and that is understanding our numbers when it comes to sustaining or knowing that it's right to sustain or having to take those tough actions and reduce our workforce.
Mm.
So let's talk a little bit about that. And I feel like sometimes we operate in one or two places when it comes as business owners. Fear. If we don't do this right, if I don't cut this person, my business is going to go out of business. So I need to reduce my expenses, and I see my staff as a huge expense. So that's probably one of the first places I'm going to look. Or we look at it as I can't let people go because I'm so people focused. How can I let someone go? They're depending on that income. And then we keep people too long when we should have let them go. So,
Yeah.
what tips and advice can you give us about how to understand if a reduction in workforce is the right thing?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, a lot of nuance will go into that conversation for sure. But I think what we look at when we're looking at, is the business actually trending downward, where we staffed to a level that doesn't make sense currently. We'd be looking at a number of things. So I highly encourage anybody who has started to bring on staff to have some sort of financial projection. So this could be a 13-week projection on what looking forward to the next quarter, or we like to do for all of our clients a 12-month budget. We're in a projection going forward to say what has the business done in the past and what we can we think is reasonable going forward. And things like salary expense, you actually have a very good sense of what your salary expense is going to be every month. Like most people kind of know what their regular payroll is, either every 2 weeks or every month. You kind of get a sense for what that is. So then when you know what your expenses are, you can back into what revenue targets do we really need to be hitting. And if you start to see your business not hitting revenue targets where you're not reaching your profit goals, just as a reminder for everybody, revenue minus expenses equals profit. And we really care about profit at the end of the day. And if our profit is dwindling, or maybe we're in losses every month for, a couple months, that is a good indicator of there's something really going on in the business that's not working. So it could just mean you're overstaffed. That's something to look at for sure. It could also mean that your revenue is really not where it needs to be, and that can happen from a number of different like places. So that could just be volume is down because of seasonality. And if it's seasonality, like, hey, maybe the business is coming back up in the summertime. That's when we get busy. Or maybe, January and February for a lot of businesses is just typically slow. But if you can get through those 2 months, the rest of the year is typically very healthy. So you kind of need to understand your business enough to know, is this just a blip in the season? Or is this a actual indicator that maybe the whole industry is actually struggling? I would say, look at trends and say like, what was I experiencing this in the past? Was this like what last year at this time was I running into this? You could look at that. I would also look at like what does, if you have projects and you have contracts in place, you can kind of look into the future and say, what revenue can I reasonably assume will come in the future? Because you don't want to make financial decisions, especially big ones that are affecting people's lives, by just looking at like the number in your bank account right now.
Right.
That's a very like, that's like looking at a microscope when you really need to be looking at like a map. And so we want to like make sure that you're looking at a financial projection in some kind of way to say reasonably what can we expect the money coming in and what are the expenses. And if we can't, and if we are projecting more losses into the future, then you need to look at either cutting expenses or you need to look at doing some like serious sales work and getting your revenue up.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, some indicators that you're overstaffed. I mean, you probably have a bunch of lists of things like this, but like, do you have just a lot of extra capacity? Are people not very being highly utilized? There's lots of things that could indicate, yes, you actually are overstaffed for the work that you've sold. And then you need to decide, is it just a sales problem? Or have we been doing all the sales we possibly can? And this is actually a workforce problem.
Right. I love that. And I love like the first thing that you said that really resonated with me. You said trending. And I felt like that was such an important word because occasionally we're going to have a bad month. We're going to have a month where we felt like we were on this track of going up, up, up. We're growing our revenue. And then all of a sudden we take a dip. And it's like, well, it could be that 1 month dip. It could be that last month was really high because some things came in that month that, maybe would have like because when you're looking at month over month, but for the entire year, you're
Yes.
exactly where you need to be. It's just things fell differently based on the calendar dates or things like that you had an off month. And maybe you think back, it's like, oh yeah, well, that month I was really sick for 2 weeks. So I wasn't going out and networking and doing the work to bring in the sales. Okay. It's not a trend. It's a blip on the map.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's really important. And, one of the other things that I know I am so guilty of this is pretty much all the work I do is project based. I don't have clients on retainer, but I have clients that pay payment plans.
Mm-hmm.
So I know certain months I have a minimum of so much revenue coming in because of those payment plans. Well, guess what? Payment plans end. They come to a thing. And there's been times throughout my business where it's like, oh my goodness, every client that's on a payment plan, their payment ends at the same time. What revenue do I have coming in that next month? And I'll notice that I'll start panicking. And then I'm just like, but I'm always having new projects come in. So why am I panicking? Because the known revenue is stopping when there's no trends starting that I won't get that next project.
Right. Yeah. And that piece of looking into the future and thinking and being able to see ahead to say, actually, all my projects are ending at the end of August, for example. And I know that like it's June right now. I can see ahead and I know the work that I need to be doing right now is not just the work for my clients to fulfill their projects. I need to be doing the business development work ahead of time so that it fills that pipeline for future revenue. And that's oftentimes, especially in smaller businesses where we are the actual like technician doing the work and we are also the salespeople. Like if you're filling both of those roles, which I still do, like in my business, although we have other CFOs like working for us, like I'm still in charge of like sales. That's my job as CEO and head of sales is that when we get really busy doing client work, you're not selling and then you get stuck in this like sell do cycle where you're doing work because you sold it. And then when you have time again, then you're like, oh no, I need to sell, sell, sell. And then you do, and then you sell, sell, sell. And then you get these ups and
Yep.
downs in revenue. And that is one of like the killers of like service-based businesses when they can't figure out consistent business development activities to keep a consistent pipeline. And then you start to get really stressed out about having people on the team because you're like, oh no, I know that there were 2 months where I had no revenue last year and that really freaked me out. I couldn't possibly bring somebody in. if that's going to happen again. But that really gets solved with consistent business development. But you can't do consistent business development if you don't have other team members on your team actually helping perform the work. So it's a little bit chicken and egg, but you need to make the investment in having the team members in order to be able to like have the time to have that consistent business development.
Yeah. Yeah. And while you were starting to talk about all that, I was like, well, the numbers, when they're showing you that, it can also help you see potentially where you need the help. Because maybe for you, that business development is not something you're super strong at. And you're in an industry where you don't need to be the person doing the business development, and you can hire someone to be helping you with that business development. So you have that consistency. Or
Yeah.
what you mentioned, Hannah, is having someone helping you with the client work so that way you can do it. And I think it's about understanding like where you need to be in your business and where you can successfully delegate to someone else who is going to do the job at a level that you need that job done.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be a lot of people that they would much prefer doing the work themselves, the client work, and then having somebody be that kind of the rainmaker,
Yeah.
bringing in all the business, going out and doing that sales piece. And, that can look different depending on what your industry is. But yes, like it is important. There are two separate roles there. And, we try to wear all the hats when we're first starting our business. And then we realize like that, as you want to grow, it doesn't work for you to be wearing all the hats for that long.
Right. Yeah. And I think that brings us like right to another topic that I wanted to discuss, because I feel like a lot of people make mistakes when they go and hire people to help with the business development, because they're like, ooh, I can hire this commission only position and I can do this and I can get someone to sell for me without having to invest too heavily in that position until they prove their worth type thing. And a
Hmm.
lot of times I don't see that as being super successful. Where it's commission only, people are like, some people are really driven by those roles, and other people, it's like, okay, I'm not making the sales I want to see. So I'm not making any income myself. So I'm not going to put in the effort here because I need to go put in the effort someplace else where I'm actually going to make money. And it turns into being a lot of turnover. So I always feel like sales roles, in order to be really successful, it's kind of like some of those higher upper level roles where you have to be willing to invest. But a lot of people are like, I don't know if I have the money to invest. And I know that's one thing that we were talking about offline, is not just sales roles, but sometimes those higher level roles that require a significant investment for a small business versus those lower level roles. So let's talk a little bit about that and kind of really just understanding, can they afford these higher level roles? How do we understand, like, can I afford to hire the help that I actually need and pay that help what they're worth and what they're looking for, instead of always thinking I need to hire this entry level or low wage role because that's what I feel comfortable paying?
Mm. Yeah, this is something that I feel really strongly about because I think you often do get what you pay for. And, I mean, always hiring processes, everybody's going to go through having maybe a situation where they've hired somebody thinking they're going to be great, even if they're being paid really well and they're not. Like that, let's just start there to say, like, everybody makes some mistakes in hiring as they grow their businesses sometimes. So, it can be risky in that way of like, you need to make a hire, you think, and just because somebody is requiring a really high salary doesn't mean that they're the right fit for your business either. So, you have to like weed through what do you really need first in your business before you go out and spend a bunch of money and hire somebody. I'll give you guys like a story. This is kind of an experience share from me because I grew my business. It was just me. And I was really, I mean, I was the only like CFO on our team. I had somebody to help with admin. I had somebody to help like with a little bit of accounting here and there, but it was me on Zoom calls with clients, actually serving clients. I knew that if I wanted to continue to grow the business, I needed to have another me. I needed to multiply Hannah to be able to really grow a CFO agency. And that is super scary because when I was looking around at my peers and people that I actually wanted to bring on the team, I mean, people were wanting salaries in the 150 to 225 range. Like it was a very expensive, role to be hiring for. But if I wanted really good people on the team and I wanted to surround myself with really good people as I grew the business, like that was a very, very much a reality. So I had to look at, first of all, like making sure I identified the right people, like what am I really looking for in their skill sets? But then with that, also really looking at my business model and saying, like, did I really price my services appropriately? Because I was just the person doing the services where I didn't have maybe a high cost structure, or a cost structure that could really scale. So I had to look at it and I realized that I was really underpricing my services when it was just me because I wasn't thinking about like, okay, well, if I really had to pay somebody else this, this high wage and I still need to have a margin. I couldn't just like have it be 100% flow through that, like whatever my clients are paying me, I pay right back out to salaries for this. Like I realized that I was just underpriced. So I had to go back and really like look at all my client retainers and say like, okay, I had to have some really hard conversations with clients. I had to increase prices. I had to let some clients go that were just not going to fit in the new cost structure of what we had. And then when every new client was brought on at the new pricing structure. So that was like a big part because transitioning into that, you've got to get really clear on is my pricing structure able to support higher paid employees? And then I think with like higher paid employees too, like you can also look at like the total comp of what you're giving them. So um, a lot of people maybe leaving corporate have been working 70-hour work weeks. If you're going to be promising them a 40-hour work week, that's usually much more attractive than maybe necessarily like the extra dollars. So you can kind of look at like how to attract somebody who's like high quality like that and think what is important to them right now at this stage in life that they might be looking to leave corporate. And that might be able to offer like, okay, we may not need to match their corporate salary, but we could still like, give them something that makes a lot of sense for what they're looking for at this point in their life. And then what other benefits do we have that we can offer them and look at like a total comp package. But I think bringing on those expensive employees is very scary, but I can say it is the best thing I've ever done for my business, by having other people who can do what I can do and actually do it better than me. Like
Right.
that. And because they're more focused. I mean, they're just a lot more focused. And it's been a game changer in the business.
Yeah. And I think like you said some great things in there that I just want to kind of like reiterate. First is you identified that you were undercharging for your services. And
Yeah.
I feel like we get into that trap a lot. And you probably have seen this in so many businesses and probably sometimes having to have those conversations with your clients and everything of you're not charging enough. And I think we feel that, especially when we're starting our business, like we look at a lot of things, especially if we're in the B2B market, like I can't afford that yet. So how can I expect someone to pay that? So I'm going to set my prices at this because this feels comfortable to me. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes having to get out of that mindset of, okay, we are starting our business day one, unless we're working with clients that are also starting their business day one, we're not our target audience. Our
Yes.
business is not at the spot where we would be able to hire our own services. So stop thinking about what our budget allows and starts thinking about what their budget allows. And
Yes.
also, like, we talk a lot, obviously, on this podcast around hiring, and we forget the cost it took to hire ourselves or what it should cost to have ourselves on our team. And we severely underpay ourselves and devalue ourselves a lot when it comes to our pricing. And sometimes we think about it as like, well, we're starting out just us. I don't have a lot of these other expenses. I don't have this. I can do that. I'm making the sacrifice because I'm going to grow this business. And it's like, but when do you stop sacrificing yourself and start paying yourself what you're worth?
Mm. That's huge. And that's one of my like soapbox things is making sure that business owners are really paying themselves because, we're the ones that are taking the risk on of running a business. And when there's risk, I mean, it's way riskier to be a business owner than it is to be a W-2 employee. You don't have to make difficult decisions as a W-2 employee. You are able to just kind of sit back and, yes, you always run the risk of maybe being laid off from a position or, doing the wrong thing and getting let go. But I think business ownership is much riskier in general. And so I truly believe that it should be much more rewarding financially, and not just for the maybe eventual value that may be created in a business like down the road, which I hear sometimes people think like, oh, my business is going to be my retirement someday. And, but if you're not thinking about it as like creating value right now for you, you won't be building a valuable asset in the future. So you need to be thinking about like creating enough excess in the business in order for you to compensate yourself. And, you might be paying yourself on W-2 wages if you're an S corp, or you might just be taking draws from the business if you're taxed as a sole proprietor or something like that. But you need to be paying yourself, and you need to be paying yourself a fair market wage for the work that you're doing, not just this sort of, oh, well, I can get by on $50,000 a year. I can get by on it. But if the fair market wage for the work that you're doing is $125,000 a year, you need to be paying yourself that much or more. And you might need to build your business into that. It's not going to happen like that, like overnight, right? But you need to have that as like your target of like, I'm working into that. Like, what does a full client load look like? If I have a full client load, can I pay myself that salary and then have access to run the business and still have profits on top of that? So,
Right.
yeah. And if we're not thinking about ourselves as worthy of that, or if we're not thinking of that's our true cost, then you're not going to price appropriately. So you have
Yes.
to.
Oh, 100%. And like one of the things that you just said that tie back to what we were talking about earlier, can you pay yourself appropriately when you have your full client load and still be able to do the business developments to keep that full client load?
Yeah.
So that's one thing kind of to keep in mind is as well. Like, yes, we need to pay ourselves, but we can't have every dollar be coming back to us. We need to we have those other expenses in our business. So making sure that we're factoring in those other costs and everything. So that I want to, before we go and wrap up today, just kind of talk a little bit more about that cost, that true cost of a hire, because you had mentioned a little bit about, okay, someone leaving corporate might be working 70 hours a week and they're only going to work 40 for you. So they're seeing that as a benefit. And there's certain benefits that we should provide as we're going to hire full-time staff. There's other benefits that we might not be ready to provide when we go to start hiring full-time staff. But all these things kind of add up. So how does someone really figure out, if I'm going to hire someone and pay them a salary of this, how much does this actually cost me?
Yeah. I'm a big fan of looking at like how much is that person going to actually cost me like initially, like the first month I hire them, and then also what does that ongoing monthly cost look like? Because I as an accountant, I think in months. Like I think in okay, if I'm doing a projection, I look at like what's the monthly cost. I like to know like what's our monthly revenue, what's our monthly expenses. So I like to think about what's the cost of this person monthly. Not necessarily, I do always calculate annual, but that can seem really high and almost kind of freak people out, because what I need to know now is how much extra revenue do I need to be making to cover this person's cost and then some, like and create a profit. So things that go into your cost of an employee. And I do have a YouTube video on this. So this might be something that if you want to link afterwards or something, it can go through like all the different things that go into the cost of hiring. But obviously, the first thing is going to be your gross wages. That's just, what I've decided to pay this person $50,000 a year or $20 an hour, and they're going to work on average 20 hours a week. You can figure out what that, wages number is. And then you always have to add taxes. So we don't really have the option of not paying the employer taxes. Like those are going to be that extra 6.2% and 1.45% for Social Security and Medicare. And then you're going to have like probably state taxes, and you're going to have state unemployment, and you're going to have state and then you're going to have workers' compensation. So workers' comp is usually not an option. Most states require workers' comp insurance. There are some, I think, that actually don't require it. But there's kind of like your like must haves. You're going to have to pay employment taxes. Okay. And then, I find those to be on average between 9 to 11% of the gross wages. So if you're going to pay somebody $55,000 or $50,000, add 10% onto that. And that's kind of what you can sort of ballpark average for taxes.
Right.
So 55,000 right there. And then we have a lot of like the optional benefits. So there's no requirement in most states that say you have to offer health insurance or you have to offer retirement. That might start changing. I think I would not be surprised if that eventually starts to change, but in certain states. But we have health insurance can be such a wide variety of expense. Like that can be anywhere from $300 a month to $3,000 a month, depending on the type of programs that you sign up for. It's not a requirement, but it is something that a lot of people are looking for when they go to a new employer if they don't have that through potentially like a spouse's employer. So health insurance, dental, vision, those are all optional. 401k matching or an IRA matching program, something like that, something for somebody's retirement. You can also have lots of other benefits that are things like health stipends or flexible spending arrangements or health savings accounts. You can have all sorts of different things that can be nice little add-ons for employers. I typically don't see a lot of, or for employees, I typically don't see a lot of people adding tons of additional benefits until you start having a bigger team, like maybe like 10 or 15 or more, where it starts to be like, okay, this is really, people are starting to require this. And usually that's for full-time employees. A lot of times part-time employees are ineligible for a lot of these,
Right.
benefits. But these things, what we do is we start like just adding it all up. So you can get a really true sense of, that $50,000 employee can very quickly become $70,000 over the course of a year. And then when you break that up into, your monthly amount, you can get a real true sense of how much extra is this individual going to cost me. I also like to think about like, do they need a computer when they first start? And do you work with really expensive software that they need a license for? Those are kind of the sneaky little costs that you might not be thinking about in your full financial picture, but they can add up pretty quickly if you're like, oh, I didn't realize that every time we hire a new employee the first month, that's an extra $5,000 of equipment, and you just kind of need to plan that into your financial plan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If people forget up the cost of an email address, the computer, if it's your marketing person, probably getting them access, that member level access to all the systems that you use, your project management system, it does all add up. So we do need to remember those costs. And I think like thinking through a lot of that stuff is great. It's knowing, can you actually afford this team member? If you can't afford this team member yet, how do you get the support you need in a way that you can afford it? And I know I've worked with businesses in the past where it's like, okay, you want this high level support, but you realistically can't afford this high level support. So who can we hire to help grow the revenue so then you can afford the high level support? Or sometimes we look at it as, kind of like the services that your firm offers, Hannah. It's like, can we do a fractional? So we need the high level support, but we don't actually, or might not actually need it full time right now, that we can go and get someone who can give us that expertise that we're looking for in a part-time capacity. So it's like figuring out, okay, this is what it would cost me. This is what I can afford. And how do we play with that difference to make it so what you need or what you're going to hire for fits into your budget? Also, one of the things that like I think is super important, as you mentioned, and I completely agree with, like, you don't need to go out the gate with your first full-time employee and offer this entire amazing suite of benefits. Most people expect, if they're coming to work for a really small business, that they're not going to have a full suite of benefits. But I think, especially like, I like to work with people-focused businesses, that I think we should start road mapping. What does it look like? And when am I going to add these benefits? So that
Yeah.
way it's not oh goodness, now I have 15 employees and I never actually thought about the cost of health insurance. Now I don't know if I can afford it because I never planned for it. And so sometimes I think it's important to know kind of what those potential numbers are. So when you look forward into the future, it could be, okay, well, I know that when I add my 10th employee, I want to be able to be adding health insurance as well. So what does it look like to be able to do that?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, that can be like a pretty big shock to the system. If you have not been paying for benefits and not been thinking about it, that means you're probably not pricing appropriately to think about those expenses coming in. I want to add like one other like thought for people as they're thinking about like, can I afford this new hire? One of the goals that we have with our clients is that they look at their labor costs and they calculate something called labor efficiency. And that's basically to say, like, every dollar of labor, how much revenue should that dollar of labor produce for us? So, like, really simplified concept for service-based businesses is to really think like, for every dollar of labor, can I make $2 of revenue from that person? And this is a concept driven off of the Greg Crabtree's Simple Numbers, Straight Talk, Big Profits. If anybody's read that book, but labor efficiency is like a really good way to think about it. So if you know that you want to hire somebody and they're going to cost you $7,000 a month, you know, you might be thinking, well, can I get this person, like with that extra person, can I generate another $14,000 of revenue into the business? Maybe not right away, and that's okay. Like the goal is first to like just cover their costs. Like maybe it's like, hey, I know in month one I can cover their costs, but month two I can make $10,000, and month three I can make $14,000. Like if you can start working your way into that, you know, overnight it's really hard to get labor efficiency at two, but if it's something you can work your way up to, you know, by increasing prices or being able to do more work, that's a really good kind of rule to kind of keep in mind for people.
Yes, and I think that's so important. It's one of the things we talk about here is there should be that financial ROI with the majority of positions that you're hiring for. Occasionally, especially because I know I work with a lot of moms and we're just like, I just need some time back. We're going to say,
Yeah.
I don't care if I never make another dollar. Like my business can afford this position, but most positions we're bringing in, we're bringing them in because we want to keep growing our business. We want to get that revenue. We want to be able to really have that financial ROI. So that's so important to look at when we're identifying, am I considering hiring for the right position? What's going to happen in your business because you bring this person in? How is it going to change things? Is it once again to kind of like circle back, bring us full circle to the beginning of the episode? Am I bringing someone in to help with the client work because I'm going to go do sales work? All right, well, I am responsible for bringing in those additional dollars that that person is going to help me execute on. So if those dollars aren't coming in, it's on me. It's not on that
Mhm.
team member, it's on me. And am I willing to take that responsibility on? Can I shift my focus to that sales generating work? Okay, yep, I'm willing to making that commitment. Let's move forward with that hire.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
So, all right, Hannah, we have to start wrapping up. So tell everybody how they can get in touch with you.
Sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn if you just want to reach out. Tell me if you do find me on LinkedIn, tell me that you listen to the podcast because I get a lot of spam. So I like to know that it's actually somebody who connected from something very real and not just prospecting on LinkedIn. I'm sure you get that as well.
Oh, yes.
Um, You can also just email me directly. It's hannah@claracfo.com. And then I would encourage anybody who's curious about some of these topics to go to the YouTube channel. So you can go to the Clara CFO Group YouTube channel. Um, you could also just look up my name, Hannah Smolinski, on YouTube. We might be changing the name of the channel very soon. So I want to make sure that that is clear. But it should come up if you search either of those terms on YouTube. And we do have a video specifically about the cost of hiring and another one about like hiring your first employee as well. So there might be some good meat content in there for people.
Yes. All right. And of course, we'll share a bunch of links to get out to all that stuff in the show notes. All right. Final question that I love to ask all my guests. We've all had leaders or managers who have stood out to us. Think of a leader or manager that has stood out to you and share one thing about them.
Um, yeah, I was thinking about this. I think that like the leaders that stand out to me most are the ones that were humble, and had kind of a servant leadership approach to the way that they led. Thinking of one boss in particular, it just never seemed like there was much of a hierarchy in his mind of like, well, I shouldn't be doing this because I'm the boss mindset. But definitely willing to like get his hands dirty and to actually do the work and um, to be able to like understand everything that's happening in the business and being willing to like get in there and do it himself. So he didn't have to most of the time, but I think just having that attitude of, saying like not having this like I'm better than that mentality. I really have always appreciated that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. Like, I feel like it is super important to build that team, to build that morale. Like if your team is struggling, be like, okay, I'm going to help you, or I'm going to figure out a way to get you help versus figure it out on your own. Just do it on your own. Just get the work done. It's like, no, to have that boss that recognizes that you're struggling or times or that things is just a busy day. You need a little extra hand and they're willing to help you out really goes a long way with building that great team culture.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Hannah, that wraps up everything for today. So thank you so much for joining us today on the Growing Your Team podcast.
Thank you, Jamie.
Are you ready to hire a new team member for your business and you want to ensure you hire the person who can succeed in the role, make you happy, and positively impact your bottom line? Then let's talk and see how growing your team can help you master the art of hiring. Through bespoke hiring frameworks and comprehensive guidance, you will learn how to attract candidates who have the passion you desire and the skills needed to succeed. At Growing Your Team, women entrepreneurs and leaders work with us to help them expand their unique businesses by teaching them how to hire like a pro. Let's connect and see how we can help you. Send me an email at jamie@growingyourteam.com. That's Jamie, Jamie, @growingyourteam.com, or head on over to growingyourteam.com/jumpstart, with jumpstart being all one word, and let's talk about how you can become a confident leader who hires right every single time.